we're in the end of the year, so now it's cleanup time. It's time. There's still a couple of games still to come out or whatever. Nothing crazy. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle just came out. Got to make time for that at some point. But I'm now in a position where I can start doubling back and getting to games that I missed that I wanted to touch and get to. And so I've been playing Silent Hill 2, the remake. I'm about 9 or 10 hours deep. So probably I'm definitely past halfway. I'm probably around 3/4.
Well, you are at the penultimate level, kind of.
Yeah. So I've reached what they call the Abyss or the Historical Society part of the game. I'm past the hospital, which I swear to God that hospital must have been 5 hours of game time. I'm like, Jesus Christ, it was so long. For good reason, though. And Silent Hill 2, I like it. I like it a lot, actually. I think it's a great game. It does a lot really, really well, but it also does some things that I'm not super fond of. And I don't know where the balance is, as I have not played the original game. So I don't know if these things I don't like are because it's a remake of the original game, because it's a PS2 game from 2002.
I want to say, yeah.
Yeah. Or if it's Blooper Team doing things that I'm not a fan of. Blooper Team who developed the remake. But to start with the positives, it's pretty much what everybody else has been saying. Atmosphere, ambiance, horrifying. Sound design, horrifying. This is probably, Phil, the most uncomfortable survival horror game I've ever played.
Interesting.
This game is disgusting. Running around its environments is always tension building. You do not feel comfortable playing this game. There's a point in games like the Resident Evil 2 remake, which I still herald as probably the best survival horror game I've ever played. There's a point in Resident Evil 2 where you feel confident. You feel like you're running through these areas, and there's some catharsis in that because you spent so many hours in the early game being terrified. Now being able to run around the environments and feeling powerful feels good too, right? That doesn't happen here in Silent Hill 2. Now, it's not because you feel empowered, or you don't feel empowered, rather, or that you feel helpless, or that you're even necessarily scared. The way they've approached lighting, sound design, and then just general ambiance and art direction, it's so uncomfortable to just be in these environments. These environments are disgusting. This might be the grossest game I've ever played in my life. It is disgusting. And the choices they make, Connor, you touched on it big time with sound design in your review. The choices they make with sound in this game, the radio, which I'm sure was part of the original game.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. The radio being on every time there's movement that isn't you going around. There's moments where you'll just hear breathing, and it doesn't have a source. There's no source to the breathing. You just hear it. Or moaning, and you're just walking around these bloodied environments. There's bugs, there's feces. It's dark as hell. I was saying to Connor earlier, this might be the best dark game that I've ever played. A game that is focused on being dark. There's little to no light in it. This might be the best example of how to do that, because this game is dark as shit. You can barely see anything throughout most of the experience. And that part of the game I think is so good. I'm uncomfortable every time I pick up the controller, which is something that Dead Space never does that. Resident Evil only does it for probably about half the game, and then it turns around. So yeah, that part, phenomenally well done. Gameplay, me and Connor had a conversation during the review. He thinks Silent Hill 2 gameplay is good. I disagree. I think this gameplay is fine. I think it's serviceable. I think it gets the job done. But overall, I think it's quite repetitive. I don't think there's a lot of player choice you can do. Games like Resident Evil, you have a lot of choices. You can fight the enemy. You can run away. You can maybe take a couple out, spend a little bit of your resources. Every enemy means something in Resident Evil. Whereas this game, sure, you can run away from them, but why would you?
It's not like the second game where that's a very viable strategy. For this one, it kind of pushes you to do that.
Yeah,
Fight them.
yeah. You're very much feeling like, all right, there's an enemy in this room. I'm gonna kill them. They're gross, and I don't like interacting with them. Their presence is scary, or just uncomfortable is a better word. The game is uncomfortable. But yeah, every enemy I come across, I kill them. Because I don't see a reason why not to. I'm swimming in resources all the time. The game's not very difficult. And as soon as you memorize enemy attack patterns, because this game is based around a dodge and punish system with its combat, as soon as you learn enemy attack patterns, they become trivial and really basic. Boss fights, I think the boss design, as far as how they look and the gimmick of them, is cool. But how you actually interact with them and go about them, pretty lame. Like, it's mostly just shoot them a lot. And yeah, I think there's a lot of moments of this game that are really, really well designed and really well thought out. But then there's moments where I scratch my head and I go, why did you do this? There's moments in the game, for example, where like they want to put you in a new environment than what you're in currently. And most of the time, they just have some superpowered enemy knock you out, and then you wake up in the new area. And you're like, all right, you couldn't figure out like a clever way via level design to get me to the place I want to be. Level design, I also think, varies from moment to moment. Sometimes it's phenomenal. Sometimes it's just okay. I don't think it's ever bad, but sometimes it is just okay. Mm-hmm. I think the best moments of the game are when it's more Resident Evil-like, and you are in a huge building or apartment building or hospital or something like that. There's a lot of locked doors and puzzles, and you got to solve them and figure it out while you are battling these like evil creatures that want to kill you. All of that works very, very well. When it becomes a little more linear, or when it becomes a little more open, like in the opening hours of the game where you're just kind of exploring the town of Silent Hill, I don't think it's very good. I would say probably, Phil, the first 2 hours of this game, I would say, are not good. It takes a while to get it takes a while to get going, but there's a clear point where a switch gets flipped and the quality spikes dramatically, and you go, oh, okay, now here we are. I
didn't want to interrupt earlier, but when you were talking about, excuse me, the comparisons in gameplay to this in Resident Evil, I think just from like what I've seen, I obviously haven't played Silent Hill ever. But from what I've seen, I can imagine I would agree with you in that I would prefer Resident Evil.
I think Resident Evil, you can argue that the shooting feels better in games like this and in Alan Wake. You could argue that. I personally disagree, because I don't think any of the guns have weight to them, or personality to them. The pistol in Resident Evil has a personality, and you got to learn the personality of these weapons to get good with them.
Is the pistol in this room right now? Is it talking to you? Like, are you okay?
I mean, it's coming over Sunday for brunch, and we're gonna have a really good time.
Okay.
It's gonna meet my parents. I'm very excited about it. So
And it's gonna
That's
fuck
cool.
them.
Jesus in front of me.
I mean, you.
But
you.
Player agency, I think Resident Evil excels at greatly, giving you a lot of options of how to interact with enemies. Silent Hill 2, it's you either shoot them or you engage in melee combat, which is probably more fun than shooting them, but it does get repetitive and tedious, because it is all right, they're swinging, so I'm going to dodge, and then I'm going to punish, and then they dodged, and now they're swinging, so I'm going to dodge again, and then now I'm going to punish, and yeah, you just follow that pattern repeatedly. But yeah, I think a lot of the puzzles are pretty good. I don't think there's any bad puzzles per se. There are some that I didn't understand, but overall, all the puzzles are so simple that you can kind of brute force your way through them. There's one specifically in the early hours, about a clock, and you have to you got to get the hour hand and the minute hand and the second hand, for the clock, and you got to put it on there. No idea how to, and then you have to turn the clock to a certain time. No idea how you're supposed to know what time you're supposed to turn it to. I just there's 12 digits on a clock, 12 inputs.
Right.
You just mash X and turn until it works. There's that, and that's not the only example of where that happened for me. But overall, I think there are a lot of moments in the game where I go, oh, that's clever. Oh, that's fun. There's been moments where I've overthought the puzzle, where I thought it was more complicated than it was, so I ended up wasting 10, 15 minutes on this puzzle that was way easier in my brain. There's one specifically early in the game where you have to look at pictures on the wall and count the number of things that are in the pictures. And at first, it's like real like basic, and it's like, I guess I'll spoil it. It's you're in the hospital, and you have to find portraits of nurses, doctors, and trees. They're three separate things. So a portrait of nurses, a portrait of doctors, and a portrait of trees. Well, I got the nurses and doctors, no problem. It took me a while to find the trees picture. So I thought there wasn't a trees picture, and I thought they were adding a level of complexity to it, and I had to count the actual plants in the room because there was a lot of plants in the room. So I was like, oh, this thing looks like a tree, and then here's like a little flower plant. Okay, yeah, I'll count those because that's clever to like set up a pattern and then subvert my expectations, and I actually have to count this other thing. That's cool. So I go around, and there's like 7 plants in the room. So I put in the number of 7, and it didn't work. And I was like, what the fuck? That one I just kind of brute forced my way through because I knew the other 2 digits. And then as soon as I solved the puzzle, I turned around and saw the picture of trees, and I went, fuck, god damn it. So that's my fault. But other than that, I think the puzzles are really good. Yeah, if you're a fan of survival horror games, I think you should play this game. It's a really good game. I don't think it's like the best ever made. I think it falls short in comparison to Resident Evil. I probably like Dead Space more, but it's right there with that. Phil, I don't know if you'd be able to handle this one. It's
really?
that. Yeah, I think it's too uncomfortable for you to handle. But I'd love to see.
I do get quite uncomfortable. I feel like when it comes to survival horror games, I definitely thrive more in an environment where like I can talk to other people.
Oh, for sure.
Rather than like just being alone. Because then I just want to, my fight or flight kicks on, and I just be like, I'm just going to turn the game off.
I do want to add the last thing. Connor praised it in the review, and it generally gets a lot of praise online, is the narrative of this game. I have not beaten the game, so I don't know yet. I'm assuming this is a type of game where there's a twist or a big reveal later in the game that kind of recontextualizes the rest of the journey. But as of right now, there's not a lot of story in this game. And it's not my pretentious Tavin level of story. Like, there's just not a lot happening in the game, like narrative-wise. You do run into other characters and you talk to them, and every interaction you have with them is weird. It's a weird interaction every time. They don't talk like normal people. And clearly the narrative is the overarching narrative is some kind of metaphor. Silent Hill is a town, is some type of mental metaphor for something. I don't know yet. I'm assuming that's going to be revealed late game. But as of right now, I don't understand the praise for the narrative. There like kind of isn't one. It's very bare bones of like, you're looking for your wife, and then you're going to meet people, and nothing changes. Every time a cutscene plays, characters are in the same state as they were at the beginning of the cutscene. I don't understand what is driving this narrative forward. Characters aren't going through arcs, at least not right now. I'll reserve like final opinions about that until I beat the game, but as of right now, I don't get the praise for that.
So it's go on, Phil.
Well, I was going to say, I'll go ahead and just tell you what the twist is. Everything's being controlled by a dog with levers. And it's a Shiba Inu. He's controlling all the. He's in a little control panel and controlling all the cameras watching you and making all the enemies spawn.
That is a thing. I know that's a thing. Yeah,
secret ending. Yeah,
that's a secret ending type thing. Yeah, it's a joke ending though, right? It's not.
It is a joke ending. Yes, it is.
Another one's about aliens, I think.
What?
Joke ending as well, of course.
Oh, okay.
No, yeah.
You get abducted, right?
Yeah, it's very weird. I remember seeing it, but I was like, well,
I miss when games were
video games.
I miss when video games didn't like budgets weren't so high, so the artists had time to do fun, goofy things in them. We kind of like talked about that in our Metal Gear Solid 2 review, where like the game like allows you to like think about things and like fuck around with it and reward you for fucking around. I sent both of you a clip of like in Metal Gear Solid 2, there's cockroaches at a specific point, and if you put a bomb on the thing and blow it up and look at the explosion, the cockroaches come and splatter on the screen. But there's also a funny thing where like if you leave the room and look at the direction of where the cockroaches are, the cockroaches will fly through the wall and splatter on your screen anyway. That's funny. Obviously not intentional. Anyways, you were saying about narrative, Connor.
Yeah, it's more nuanced because it's all tied up in the characters and their own little journeys they go on, but they themselves don't get. You have to read into a lot of things.
Yeah.
You're at literally the point before a lot of that stuff starts
Making sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
Literally, like, you're right there.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
right on the doorstep.
It
of
feels like I am.
Yeah.
It feels, because, as soon as you get to the historical society or whatever it's fucking called, it's like kind of museum-ish, and then you go underground and so forth. But it feels like, when like you hit a moment in whatever medium of art you're in, you hit a moment where you're like, oh, I feel the tension building of reveal. It feels like reveal is happening.
Yeah.
I'm at that moment where I'm like, it feels like something's going to happen here. I don't know what that is, but also, why are these characters acting so goddamn normal around each other?
Yeah,
it doesn't feel like often James is like, oh, it's dangerous. You shouldn't go alone. But there's nothing else to that conversation of like, wow, I can't believe we survived this like type thing. And so it's like every time it's just like, oh, we're just hanging out in this very misty town. Like, we're just kind of chilling or whatever. And so, yeah, it's a weird game, but it's a good game. And I fully recommend it. I like it a lot.
I really would like you said, want to see how Phil is playing this game because it is uncomfortable. It's unsettling.
I genuinely, I don't know if he can make it past. Phil, how are you with bugs?
Fine.
Fine? Okay.
I wouldn't think that hindered.
This is a game.
I get goosebumps sometimes, but
Yeah, this is a game that like preys on every type of phobia they can imagine. So there's like rooms where it's just dirty and like feces everywhere and remains of bodies and you don't know what they are and it's gross and smelly. You feel like you can smell the game.
Yeah.
You know?
I was gonna say I'm good. I can look at literally anything, but if I smell it, then it's over.
This is a game where like you could almost smell it like
dank
with how detailed it all is. But then like there's rooms where it's just a bunch of cockroaches everywhere, or rooms with a bunch of moths everywhere. Sometimes you end up in a very claustrophobic area and it's very tight and your controls are restricted and so forth. Monsters and nurses and doctors and needles and like any type of phobia you can imagine. I'm surprised I haven't come across clowns yet.
I think the biggest pop that like a bug in a video game has gotten for me recently, and it's just because it was a jump scare, was the tarantula crawling down the wall in Resident Evil.
I hated that. That moment. Did not like that moment.
That one got me, and that's like. But once I was in the room and like with them around, I was like, I'm just gonna fucking shoot you with a shotgun.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Watch their abdomens explode or their thoraxes.
That was one thing. I've made it a little more than halfway a playthrough Resident Evil Remake again earlier this year. And yeah, that was a room where I was like, I know the spider's crawling down. I'm entering and exiting immediately. So when I re-enter, it resets the spider somewhere else. I don't want to see that fucker climb down above me. Anyways, yeah. So Silent Hill 2, good game. Play it.
I also had the while we were talking about like I made the joke about like, is the gun talking to you? Is it in the room? I had the cursed thought of like for Resident Evil. I had the cursed thought of playing through Resident Evil with the high on life gun.
Oh god, that'd drive me insane.
That'd be a fun.
It's just fucking. Yeah, it's just fucking Rick and Morty making jokes at you while you're shooting zombies.
You get chewed on by a zombie and the gun's like, what the fuck? That was so telegraphed. How did you miss that?
You're terrible at this game.